This video will introduce you to the GSTR1 dashboard and its various sections. Before we continue, please note that all exempt or non-GST supplies and exports also need to be reported in GSTR1, even if no tax is applicable on such supplies. A taxpayer needs to file GSTR1 of a tax period by the 10th of the succeeding month. For example, GSTR1 for September 2017 would become due on or before 10th of October 2017. One can prepare GSTR1 in two ways. In the first method, taxpayers can log into the GST portal and make direct entries on the portal itself. In the other method, taxpayers can prepare GSTR1 in offline mode by using the offline utility and Excel or CSV templates and upload the data to the GST portal to file the return. There are two buttons on the tile, Outward Supplies Made by the Taxpayer GSTR1. These are Prepare and Prepare Offline. The Prepare button allows preparing the return online, whereas the Prepare Offline button allows uploading the GSTR1 data from the offline utility. Click the Prepare link on the highlighted tile that says Outward Supplies Made by the Taxpayer GSTR1. This will take you to the GSTR1 dashboard. Let's understand the sections and tiles that are displayed on this page. The details that need to be furnished can be broadly grouped into two categories. One group has sections in which the invoice level details have to be captured rate-wise. In the other group, the summarized information from month has to be declared. The first section, GSTR1, Outward Supplies Made by the Taxpayer, displays some basic information about your GST registration profile, the status of GSTR1 filing for the selected period, and a column to add your gross turnover for the previous financial year. Adding the gross turnover figure and saving the same is a one-time activity. In case you are a new taxpayer and this field does not apply to you, just enter 0 here. In the GSTR1 Invoice Details section, the B2B Invoices tile captures details pertaining to business-to-business supplies in the given tax period. In other words, all supplies made to registered persons must be captured here. The B2C large block captures all interstate supplies made to unregistered persons where the invoice value is more than 2,50,000 rupees. In the credit or debit note registered tile, you need to enter all credit notes and debit notes that were issued to the registered persons. Whereas, in the credit or debit note unregistered tile, all credit notes and debit notes issued to unregistered persons are entered. Under Export Invoices, enter details of all your exports, including deemed exports as well as supplies made to a registered entity in a Special Economic Zone or SEZ. In all the invoice level and credit or debit note sections, the declaration has to be done rate-wise for each invoice and debit or credit note. Scrolling down to the GSTR1 Other Details section, B2C Others is where you enter the state-wise or place of supply-wise and tax rate-wise summary of all intra-state supplies made to unregistered persons irrespective of their value. This section also captures interstate supplies of invoice value that are less than or equal to 2,50,000 rupees each. The Need-Rated Supplies tile captures information regarding all supplies of items that are exempt from GST. In the Tax Liability Advances Received tile, details of any advances received against supplies to be made in the future are captured. Advance payments are subject to tax under the GST regime. Under the Adjustment of Advances category, details of supplies made against advances received in the previous tax period are entered. Both the advance received and adjusted have to be reported with place of supply, that is, state code and rate-wise. Next, the HSN-wise summary of outward supplies will capture the HSN classification code-wise supply details. This style captures the total taxable value of each item supplied and each service provided in the given tax period. Finally, the Documents Issued tile captures the details of documents that might be issued by you in the given tax period. Examples of such documents are the invoice range, specifying the starting and ending serial numbers of invoices issued, total count of invoices issued, number of invoices that were cancelled, and the number of net invoices that were issued after cancellation. After filling up all details, you need to submit the form on the GST portal by clicking the Submit button. The GST portal then makes a quick validation check and highlights any errors that need to be fixed. Next, you need to accept the declaration that the information furnished is true and correct by checking this box here and file the return either by using DSC, EVC or e-sign options. This video familiarizes you with the different sections of GSTR1 in which data has to be furnished. As stated in GSTR1 return overview video, the sections can be broadly grouped into two categories. In one category, invoice level details have to be furnished, whereas in the other category, summary level information has to be furnished. The first group has 5 tiles. The first tile summarizes the invoice details furnished in respect of B2B supplies to registered persons. B2B or business-to-business invoices are issued against supplies made from one registered person to another registered person. The invoice level data of all B2B supplies made in the given tax period needs to be uploaded in GSTR1 for successful filing of tax return. As explained in the GSTR1 overview video, log into the GST portal and navigate to the GSTR1 dashboard by selecting the current tax period. Click the B2B invoices block. If you have already uploaded invoice details, you will see a screen displaying the receiver-wise summary as shown. Clicking the link underlying each receiver GSTIN will take you to a screen in which already furnished invoice details are visible. If you want to add more invoices for the same receiver, you can do so by clicking the Add Invoice button here. To add invoices issued to other receivers, go back to the previous screen and click the Add Invoice button like before. On the Add Invoice page that opens, enter the GSTIN or UIN of the receiver taxpayer and move to the next field either by using Tab key on your keyboard or by clicking into the next field with your mouse. Notice that the receiver name, the default place of supply, and the default supply type fields get auto-populated. The supply type field gets populated based on your place of supply. If the place of supply is not the same as that of the receiver's place of business, you can change it from the POS drop-down list and the supply type will be displayed accordingly. In case of deemed export invoices or invoices for supplies made to SEZ, please check the relevant boxes as applicable. The invoice number should be unique for every GSTIN for each financial year of maximum length 16 characters and alphanumeric with allowable special characters of slash and dash. After that, enter the date of invoice. Please note that the invoice date cannot be a future date or a date prior to the date of registering with GST. Next, enter the total value of the invoice. Select the Supply Attract Reverse Charge checkbox if applicable. Reverse charge is applicable in case you are supplying goods or services that have been notified by the government under the reverse charge mechanism. Select the e-commerce checkbox if the supply was made through an e-commerce portal. Scroll down to enter the taxable value of invoiced items as per the applicable rate of taxes. The rate here denotes the integrated tax rate or combined tax rate of central tax plus a state or union territory tax. On entering the taxable values, system will automatically update the central tax and state or union territory tax fields calculated on the basis of rate and taxable value. Enter the cess value if applicable. If the tax amounts collected in the invoice are different from the calculated values, you should edit the calculated values then. After entering the invoice details, click Save to save the invoice data. Notice the confirmation message and your invoice details under the Uploaded by Taxpayer tab. You may keep adding more invoices by clicking the Add Invoice button in similar manner. If you want to add invoices of a particular receiver, you can use the Add Invoice button available on the receiver's screen as explained earlier. In that case, the receiver's GSTIN, name, default place of supply, and default type of supply fields would be pre-populated. The Uploaded by Taxpayer tab shows all the invoices that you have uploaded for a given tax period. Similarly, Uploaded by Receiver tab displays the invoices that you missed from your GSTR1 but were detected and uploaded by the receiver taxpayer. If the receiver taxpayer has modified any invoice that you uploaded in your GSTR1, it will show up under the Modified by Receiver tab. And finally, the Rejected by Receiver tab displays invoices from your GSTR1 that were rejected by the receiver taxpayer. By default, the invoices appear as pending once they are saved and while the system is validating the data. If there are no validation errors, the invoices show as processed and they flow to GSTR2A and GSTR2 of the respective receiver taxpayer. Once done, click the Back button to return to your GSTR1 dashboard and add details of supplies to consumers. Similarly, you can enter the invoice details in the B2C large invoices section of all interstate supplies made to unregistered persons where the invoice value is greater than 2,50,000 rupees. Click this tile and click the Add Invoice button. Please note that this type of invoice does not require the recipient's GSTIN. Just ensure that the value of each invoice that you enter in this category is greater than rupees 2,50,000. Otherwise, the system will not accept the invoice and will show an error message. For entering credit and debit notes, you will need to furnish the details of the original invoice against which this instrument was issued. For export invoices, you will need to furnish the invoice number and additional details such as the port code and whether the GST payment is to be made or not. The shipping bill number or bill of export number is not a mandatory field, but if the same is available at the time of filing GSTR1, the same should be provided. Let's scroll down and move to the next section, GSTR1 Other Details. In the B2C Others category, you can enter the summary details of B2C interstate invoices with value of less than or equal to 2,50,000 rupees for each invoice and issued to unregistered persons. Additionally, this category also includes B2C invoices that were raised against all intrastate supplies irrespective of the invoice amount. However, this category requires summary level information to be furnished, such as details as per place of supply, and tax rates have to be entered, which includes supplies made via e-commerce portals as well. GST has provisions for declaring nil-rated, non-GST and other exempt supplies. Nil-rated are those supplies for which the tax rate has been notified as nil. Non-GST are those supplies on which the tax is not levied under the GST Act, such as for supply of wine, beer, land, etc. Whereas other exempt supplies are those supplies which have been exempted through a notification under the GST law. While all these supplies carry a zero rate of tax, all these supplies must be captured separately in GSTR1. Click the nil-rated supplies block to open its field as shown. The categories shown here are interstate supplies to registered person, interstate supplies to consumer, intrastate supplies to registered person, and intrastate supplies to consumer. For these categories, you can specify the value of supplies that were either nil-rated, exempted excluding nil-rated, and non-taxable or categorized as non-GST supplies. Click Edit to unfreeze the fields and to begin entering the data. Enter the required data. Once done, click Save and the fields will be frozen again. Click the Back button to return to the GSTR1 dashboard. Before concluding this course, I want to show brief about two more categories. These are HSN or SAC Summary of Outward Supplies and the section that captures the list of documents issued. The HSN or SAC-wise summary of outward supplies needs to be reported if the annual turnover exceeds 1.5 crore rupees. Providing this summary with annual turnover of less than 1.5 crore rupees is optional, but the taxpayer still needs to provide information about the description of goods. If the annual turnover in the preceding year was between 1.5 crore and 5 crore rupees, the taxpayer needs to report HSN codes at 2 digits level. For annual turnover exceeding 5 crore rupees, the HSN codes must be reported at 4 digits level. Next, the Documents Issued section has 12 subsections in which you need to declare the invoice series and provide details of multiple series as applicable. After you have added invoices for sections relevant to your business, in the bottom section of the page, you will find an option to submit your return for auto-validation of details, a checkbox for signing declaration, and the buttons to facilitate the e-filing steps. Once you have entered all the required details, simply go ahead and file the return, either by using DSC, EVC, or e-sign options. Thank you.
It's that simple.